Can I even tell you how excited I am for today's guest? Because he is a true giant in the sound money and liberty movement. G. Edward Griffin is the author of A World Without Cancer and, of course, The Creature from Jekyll Island, one of the most important and influential books ever written on the Federal Reserve, central banking, inflation, debt, and the hidden structure of our monetary system. But frankly, his work goes far beyond money. For decades, Mr. Griffin has challenged people to look beneath the headlines and ask the deeper question: who benefits? Who pays? What is really driving the system? And what principles must a free people understand if they want to remain free? His research has helped generations connect the dots between money, power, policy, and personal liberty. And I have to say, personally, I am so honored and excited to have been invited to speak at the Red Pill Expo, because that mission, helping people see clearly and think independently and prepare wisely, is exactly the kind of work that this moment requires. So today, at a time when debt is exploding and confidence is fragile and more people are questioning the future of the dollar, Mr. Griffin's voice is more important than ever. So without further ado, and it is truly my honor to invite Mr. Griffin up here with all of us live today. So I hope you have some questions ready. Mr. Griffin, thank you so much. Welcome to our live program.
Well, what a wonderful introduction that is. I hope I can get a recording of that when I'm going to play it for my family and say, there, you see?
I know that feeling. Now, you did send us a video. Would you like us to play that now?
Oh, no, I just thought later on we'll be talking about the Red Pill Expo, hopefully. And I thought afterward, if that's okay with you, it's a little promotion for the event, and I hope everybody will want to come to it. So
I hope so, too, because I personally am really looking forward to it. So, okay, well, how about we just jump into a conversation, and then I'll start to take some questions.
Well, that sounds great. So.
Okay.
Where would you like to go?
Well, in The Creature from Jekyll Island, you help people understand that the monetary system is not just about economics. It's about power. So looking at today's world of central banks, sovereign debt, digital currencies, and surveillance technology, has the creature changed form?
The creature has changed the world, yes. Of course, it depends on where you start to look at it. I think something comparable to the creature, maybe the egg form of it, existed long before the Federal Reserve System came into being. The Bank of England actually was the pioneer in putting together all the nuts and bolts to make what we now call central banking a reality. But it's been growing. That creature has been getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. Now we come to a point in history, and you are so well informed on this topic. I love the way you described some very tough issues there, made them very clear. But the biggest issue, in my view, is the fact that the monster or the creature from Jekyll Island, the Federal Reserve System, and all the other central banks of the world seem to be, no more than seem to be, they are in a process of metamorphosis. You might be tempted to say that they are self-destructing, and they are, of course, but it's not because they want to just destroy themselves. What they want to do is reinvent themselves, because the world they have created is now so fragile and so so sick because of the toxic components it has injected into it. Yes, that's what makes the world sick. And so I think long ago they knew that couldn't last forever. So they were just going to play and ride the horse as far as they could before it dropped dead. But now I think they saw that the event was on the horizon. The system was collapsing. So like the wise men that they are, and I'm sure there are some women involved in that package too, but because they're so wise, they decided not to just let it happen. And they said, now what are we going to do? They decided to make it happen. And so they could come on and say, oh, look what's happening. And the very people who created the problem will be saying, what are we going to do about this now? And we'll say, yeah, what are you going to do about this? And we'll trust the same people that got us into this mess. We'll trust them to get us out. And that's the plan that nobody sees, is that it's all being structured in that way. And so anyway, that's my take on that big topic that you introduced. We are in the process of seeing the Federal Reserve System appearing to destroy itself. But what in reality is happening, I believe, is that it's metamorphing into something even worse than we have seen before.
Well, you brought up the worst part, so let's dive into that. What do you see the potential if we don't do anything? Because you've been fighting this battle forever. What is the worst? And then I have the next question.
Well, the worst is that up until now we've been talking about how to keep our money so it has purchasing power, and how to invest it wisely and not have it destroyed by too much bureaucratic regulation and taxation and all of the stupid economic policies that are introduced. We're always worrying about protecting our money, saving our money, surviving the system, and so forth. And now, all of a sudden, we're being confronted with a new system which won't even have money. There'll be no money to worry about keeping. Now, that depends on how you define the word money, of course. I think the classical definition, or the simple definition, is the one I chose to use in my book, which is money is simply a medium of exchange. It's something you exchange for something else. You don't have any use for it itself, but because it has some built-in value that everybody else wants it, you can use it to exchange for something else. So you don't have to do barter all the time. You can always take this intermediary of exchange and just stick it in your pocket or put it in your mattress or wherever you want to put it until the time comes you want to trade it in for a new car or a piano or something. Mm-hmm. So, but that day is coming to an end because there will be no money of that kind. There will be a medium of exchange. There'll probably be some kind of a digital token. I don't know exactly what they're going to call it. I don't know that they know exactly what they're going to call it. But it'll have some very virtuous name, and everybody will be told, oh, this is wonderful. Look at all these digits you've got in your account. But it's just your account. What is an account?
It's a permission.
What is it? I don't know. I never had my hand on an account. I've looked at it, I've read numbers and so forth. But in other words, they're going to remove money from circulation completely. It's the cashless society they've been talking about and dreaming about for as long as I can remember. Mm-hmm. And I've delved into some of the old books. They were dreaming about that way before the Federal Reserve System, the theorists were. So they wanted to take money out of circulation so that you were completely dependent on tokens or ledgers of some kind in an invisible, inaccessible account. It's your account, but you can't touch it. Right. And so the day is very close to that. And the reason that is of great concern, and should be a great concern to everybody, is that if you don't hold it, if you can't hold your money, you don't own it. It just doesn't even exist. Yeah. If you don't hold it, if you can't stick it in your pocket or bury it in your backyard or hand it to somebody that here's a poor chap sitting on the sidewalk with a tin cup, and you want to drop something in his tin cup. If you don't have anything to drop into it except, my account, well, he doesn't have an account. And besides that, the account will not be yours anyway. It'll belong to the banking system. The central banks will now be metamorphosed into a new system where they actually become the keeper of the exchequer, so to speak. They sit on the treasury, and it doesn't exist. And one of the most important qualities of good money, good sound money, is that it has intrinsic value. Now, a lot of people who are devotees of cryptocurrencies really get upset over that when I say that good money has to have intrinsic value for something other than money, which is what makes it good money. Because if it's just money, but money is no good with it, you don't have any options.
Right.
So anyway, these are all things that most people don't think about. Mm-hmm. And I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, listen up very tightly, because a crime has been committed, and the people who are warning you about this crime, in most cases, are the people who committed the crime. And it's part of a psychological war, so that you trust the very people that have destroyed your economy. Now they're trying to destroy your freedom and your liberty, your privacy. These are the people that are telling you, you got to do something about this. They're the criminals. They're the crooks. And you better wake up to it. So that's my message.
I totally agree with that. And, in the beginning, how was money sold? That it was supposed to be a store of human labor, so that no matter when you use that money, it still had the same level of purchasing power as the original labor that created it. But, once we went to this crap, which is fiat money, right, away from sound money, now this is by decree. So it's pretty easy to start to steal the value of people's labor. I wish people would really take out a bill from their wallet and see the word note on there, because that really is the whole story, isn't it? Note is a debt instrument.
It's a note. It means it's a debt instrument.
Right. And, I love the reason they want to get rid of cash, because this is a debt instrument that doesn't pay or charge interest. If we go into cryptocurrencies, digital currencies, what do they say? They say then they can regulate the interest on the next form of fiat money.
Well, they can do more than that. They can regulate the interest, or they can give it to you free. That's part of the game.
Yes.
That's part of the deception. Oh, don't worry about the economy. Look, we're going to give you a guaranteed annual income, and we're going to take care of even your house bill. I know you can't afford housing anymore, but look, we've got a house for you, and you can live there free. And you need food? Well, here are some coupons. And retirement benefits? Okay. Oh, how about a little trip around the world? Oh, we got that. Sure, just sign up here. And everybody's so happy. Oh, the government is so kind to us. Look what they're giving us, free. But the free element is a iron ring around your wrist or your leg or your foot. You are now a slave, because you can't even drink a glass of water without some kind of medium of exchange, which is the classic definition of money. But I'm here to tell you, the money that we'll have to live under if we don't stop it is the worst kind of money in the world, because it's a weapon of slavery.
Yes, I absolutely. Well, in your recent work, you keep returning to collectivism versus individualism as the issue behind the issues. So how does that philosophical battle show up inside the monetary system? Maybe especially inflation, central banking, the bailouts, the CBDCs, and the slow transfer of wealth from the individuals to, I'm not so sure it's so slow, really, from the individual to these institutions. I'm not so sure it's so slow.
Well, that's a good question. It bridges two worlds: the world of real value and material things, and the world of ideas and world concepts. It's what is okay. How do I answer that? Collectivism and individualism are two words that you never heard normally until fairly recently. First time I heard collectivism and individualism was when I read an old book, at least 100 years old, and I was just a little Boy Scout, just exploring this whole thing. I had no idea what I was probing or what I was discovering, but here's this old book, and they're talking as though everybody knows what collectivism and individualism is, and they were talking about it. And I didn't know what it was just because they were talking about it. I had no idea what it was, really, until I had a life-changing experience. I think, how much time do we have? I don't want to make this too long.
You can have as much time as you want. Actually, this is our live, so I go 2.5 hours. So rock and roll hoochie coo.
Well, we won't have to do that. I'd probably bore everybody to death in lots sooner time than that.
Not me. I don't think you'd bore anybody. I mean, this is such a privilege.
I have to tell you a little bit of my journey, because
please.
I think that what I went through was very fortunate. It was unusual circumstances. Otherwise, I would never have been able to do it. I was a young guy in Los Angeles, just got married, had a wife and a child, and another one on the way. And I was climbing the corporate ladder, and I was going, like most young men and women too, I'm sorry to say, but I was very materialistic. How am I doing was my big question. How am I looking? Oh, I should have a better car than this one. Oh, I should have a nice shiny suit. I should have things that cost money because that tells people I'm really important. I was going through all that. And it was fine. I had picked my company. It was a large insurance company. We were writing group insurance policies for corporations, starting at 25 employees all the way up to hundreds of thousands of employees in big companies. We were insuring them. It was a big business, and I was climbing the corporate ladder because I had carefully chosen that company when I was looking for a job. I realized that it was one of the, in fact, it was the third largest company in the insurance field. It was one of the big ones, and I looked at the top executives in the corporation, and they were all old. Here I am, probably about maybe 25 years old, 26 years old, something like that. And I'm looking at these guys who were, they were 60 years old,
That was old.
By the way, in case anybody's wondering, I'm now 94, and I'm long past that 60 point. But anyway, I had picked it because I figured that sooner than later, these guys were going to be retiring. And naturally, the junior executives down the ladder would be promoted upward. This is an easy step up to, I'm going to be president of this bloody organization someday. I was actually thinking that way. So the point is that I was all about me, how am I looking, material things. And then I had a rude awakening. I don't remember how, but somebody put into my hands a pamphlet, a booklet actually. I think it was about 64 pages. And the title of it, as I remember, was The Truth About the United Nations. The truth about the United Nations. What was that all about? I had studied the United Nations in university, and this guy was a college professor for some small university in the Midwest, and he was saying very negative things about the United Nations. How dare he do that? I knew. I'd gone through the course. I got good grades. I knew that the United Nations was our last best hope for peace. And you couldn't say anything bad about the UN. Anyway, to make a long story short, I, out of curiosity, went to the library one day, and the main library in Los Angeles was only 2 blocks away from our corporate office. So I went to the library and I checked out quite a few books on the United Nations. And to make a long story a little shorter, I became very much convinced that the professor was correct. And I got that impression from books that were written by people who loved the United Nations. They were most of them were employees or in the chain of command somewhere where they got money for promoting the United Nations. It was all government, this, government. All the leaders of the world were going to use the mechanism of government to solve all the problems of the world. And I realized that there was a lot of stuff going on there that was trickery. And I'll make it a little short side trip. The thing that really did it more than anything else was a book written by, I think the author's name was Conor Cruise O'Brien. And as you might guess, he was an Irishman, and he was a military guy, and he was the fellow who was in charge of the United Nations so-called peacekeeping force at that time that had been sent to the Katanga, the province of Katanga in the Congo, because at that time the whole Congo was in upheaval. The Western nations were all pulling out and leaving these countries in the Congo to their own resources. Well, it sounded as though that was a great move of generosity and humanity, but actually it was very destructive because the countries weren't really able to sustain the high degree of technology and so forth that they had. If they kick all the colonialists out, there goes all your technology, and everything started to fail. Well, when everything started to fail and people got hungry, the communists moved in and they were going to take over all these countries. And in fact, they were actually conducting a wave of terror, and they were killing people by the thousands, mostly the settlers. And the idea, there was supposed to be the supremacists, get rid of those bad white people. Had nothing to do, really, when you got underneath it, had nothing to do with race. They had a pretty good, for looking at the world as a whole, the people in the Congo were living very in peace and harmony compared to most parts of the world. And things were improving. Anyway, that's the side story. So anyway, the colonialists were all kicked out, or they left, and people were getting murdered, massacred, property was being stolen. And so the United Nations was called in to restore peace to the Congo because it was in terrible shape. Well, okay, the communists were taking over everywhere, except one province, which was called Katanga. Katanga was headed up by, the president was Moise Tshombe. And Moise Tshombe was educated in Europe. He was quite international and very highly educated, and he read some books on free enterprise, and he knew a little bit about economics, and he knew that big government was usually not a good thing in terms of producing an affluent economy.
Right.
So anyway, the Congo was in a flame. People were being murdered and property stolen and atrocities, horrible atrocities. So the United Nations peacekeepers came to restore peace and get the economy working again. But there was one province, and that was Katanga, which didn't need it. They hadn't changed at all. In fact, they were continuing life as before. Everybody was having vacations and enjoying life, and productivity was high. So there was no problem in Katanga, but every place else was horrible. So where do you suppose the peacekeepers sent their troops? To Katanga. To Katanga. And they let all the others just continue to destroy and allow the communist revolutionaries, they called them, to come to power. But they had to dethrone Moise Tshombe because he was not going along with communism. Well, we were being told in the newspapers that the peacekeepers were there to get the communists out. And so now we get back to the book, written by Conor Cruise O'Brien, and I think it was called To Katanga and Back. Conor Cruise O'Brien was the classic bureaucrat. or the classic agent of a large government. And he spoke frankly. He said, now, the United Nations Charter says that we are not allowed to interfere with the internal affairs of any country. They're only to restore peace. We don't try and influence or alter internal affairs. It's against the Charter of the United Nations. And now, however, we know that that's a lie.
Yes, it
He said,
is.
we know, and this is his words, we know that you have to lie to the people if you want to get anything done. But they want to hear these good things, so we tell them what they want to hear. Now here's this guy in charge. He's boasting of that fact, saying, "Ha ha ha." Well, that cracked my eggshell. That was the first crack in my eggshell. You mean the United Nations really is a foul group of people? They say one thing and do another, and so
shocking.
All right. Now that's just the backstory. So I decided at this early age of my coming out of the cocoon that I had to learn something more about communism. What makes these young kids coming out of the university, like I had not too long prior to that, want to adopt communism in their own countries when they can see every time communists take over somewhere, there's mass genocide, the economy collapses, everything is horrible. And why would anybody want to keep repeating that same mistake? What's going on? So I went down to the Communist bookstore in Los Angeles, down on Larchmont Street. It was called the People's Bookshop. I guess it's still there. They always did a big business down there. And so here I am, the corporate guy, young guy, climbing the ladder, going into a communist bookstore. And in those days, they didn't dress like the corporate guys. I had my shiny suit and the sideburns, the little narrow tie and briefcase and all that stuff. and they were more of the hippie type. And we were very suspicious of each other. But we got along, and I told them I was interested in knowing what this communism is all about. And they said, okay, well, they recommended all the books. They were showing me this book, that book, and I bought a lot of books. I bought, Karl Marx, of course, you think of him first of all, the Communist Manifesto, Das Kapital, and then the big collected works of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. I think there were 4 thick volumes of those. I bought those. And what I'm getting at is that I not only bought these books, I read them. And I found out very quickly that the guys there in the bookstore who were trying to get me to read these books had not read them themselves.
That sounds about right.
These guys had not read these books. Because I was reading them and making notes and charting ideas and so forth. And they had no idea what was in those books. But they were very good on slogans. From each according to his deed, to each according to his ability, and so forth. We rise up against the exploiters, and we're against war and racism. Sign me up. These are slogans. Everybody are for these things. But nobody was asking how they were actually trying to implement all these wondrous things. So now I'm cranking toward this story. I became an aficionado, you might say, on what they call Marxism-Leninism. Now, that's a strange combination of words because It seems like you're saying the same thing, but you're not. If you understand what those books say, you understand there's a huge difference between a Marxist and a Marxist-Leninist. And you find those words distinctly used in the communist literature, and you think, what on earth is that all about? Why don't they just pick a word and stick with it? Because it's not the same at all. And here's the difference. The Marxists are, as it suggests, the people have read the works of Karl Marx, and they buy into it. Now, Marx was mostly an economist and a theoretician. He was an idea guy. He was sort of the academic in the group. And he was preaching socialism he was preaching collectivism, actually, I discovered later, but I'll hold that aside for the moment.
Okay.
And but he was just mostly talking about the class difference between the working class and management and so forth, and very theoretical. I found out quickly that of all the countries in the world that had been taken over by communists at that time, and there were plenty of them, Russia, China, Cuba, right on our doorstep, countries in South America, and the people in the streets carrying the hammer and sickle flag and everything. You better take it seriously. All of the countries that have been taken over so far by communists, not one of them had ever been taken over by Marxists. They were all taken over by Marxist-Leninists. And the difference is that Lenin was the creator of the Communist Party, and he wasn't interested in engaging in a debate. He had one thing and only one thing in mind, and that is coming to power. Whatever you have to do, whatever you have to say, come to power. And most of his essays are in all those books, all are on the same theme, more or less. And basically, they can be condensed into this kind of a statement. He was saying, comrades, when we go into a country that we want to take over from the inside, we're not going to invade it from the outside. That's silly. You can get hurt doing that, you know. We're going to take it over from the inside. We're going to get people to vote for us. We don't want to fight them. We'll get them to vote for us. You don't stand up and say, look, we're communists and we want to change your society. We want to change your legal system, your heritage, even your language. No, we don't tell them any of those things. We don't tell them we don't take away their property and all that sort of thing. We tell them that we are anti-communists. We tell them that we love the traditions of their country and their culture and their legal system and their songs and their stories, their traditions. We will be the leaders of our opposition. And once they like us and vote us into power, then we can reveal ourselves. And if they want to debate with us, we can shoot them. This is Leninism. One of his most famous quotes is, promises are like pie crusts, made to be broken. That's Leninism. Now, once you understand the difference between Marxism and Leninism, and see, Lenin built an army.
Right.
He said, look, we just come to power. Once we're in power, it makes no difference. We don't need a debate. We got the guns now.
Right.
And we got the media. We got everything. So we've already won. Once I understood that, I understood what we were up against in general. And now to finish this off, you asked me about collectivism. Mm-hmm. In that process, I was making notes on all the principles that Marx had advanced, and then the new principles that Lenin had advanced and combined into this thing called Marxism-Leninism. And I had a list of them. And I found at least 12 of them that were very dominant. But of the 12, probably 6 or 7 were really the most important ones. And I had this all charted out. So then I got to thinking, well, all right, we don't want to be communists, so what's the opposite of communism? So, unfortunately, I thought I knew that, too, because I had been to university. And they taught me that the opposite of communism, that communism was on the extreme left. What's on the extreme right? Well, that's fascism and Nazism, right? So that was the opposite of communism. Well, I guess if I want to be opposed to communism, I'd better check out the opposite of communism. And for a while, I was actually calling myself a right-winger, because the right wing is supposed to be the opposite of the left wing. And I didn't want to be a leftist, so what were my options? The media and the school system did not give me any options except to be a right-winger and all that comes with collectivism. Still haven't come to that. All of that comes with, with all power in the state and so forth. Anyway, the opposite of so-called the opposite of communism. So I went over. There was no bookstore for Nazis, so I ordered a book from some mail order house, and I got a copy of Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler's manifesto.
Right.
And I read it. And blew me down. Everything in his book was identical in principle to what was in Marxism and Marxism-Leninism. There was absolutely no significant difference at all. They were the same monster, and yet they were posing. The two sides apparently somehow worked it out. They said, look, let's pretend like we're opposites, and that we'll give people a choice. You or us. Either way, we win.
Either way.
Yeah, pick them. Two wings on the same ugly bird.
Right.
You know?
Kind of like our politics here today, right?
Yeah, exactly. Once you understand it, everything opens up and it's so clear. But I did not see any of that when I started that day to the communist bookstore. So that changed everything. And I got really serious about finding out what was the opposite of communism and the opposite of fascism and Nazism, which were the same thing. That's when I started to read these old books. Mm-hmm. And most of them were over 100 years old. And now, of course, almost 100 years has passed since I read them myself. And so we can talk about 200-year-old books now. But the old books were loaded with the words collectivism and individualism. And I found out later that there apparently was some kind of a decision made at the highest levels of this hierarchy. We'll maybe talk about what that hierarchy is that covers both of those groups. They're not really opposites, although they fight the hell out of each other. They'll kill each other. And I found out that mostly that's just for appearance, or they're fighting for dominance or territory. I mean, Hitler didn't want to share anything with Stalin. And it was a question of who's going to really be the big one. So, but I found out it was nothing about ideology. They all agreed with each other. And in fact, many people probably know this by now, but the Nazis, the word Nazi is an abbreviation of the German expression of National Socialist Party. So the Nazis are socialists, right in their own name. The communists are socialists. I mean, here we go again. There is no difference, I'm telling you, between the two. And they believe the same things. So anyway, now to bring this to fruition, I started reading these books about collectivism and individualism, and it became obvious that somebody or some group of people decided about the time of World War I to remove those words from common usage, because like somebody just closed the lid. None of the newspapers would use the words anymore. There were no books published where those words were. You can't even find it in the automated indexes now. After about World War I, when we fought the world to save democracy, and there was the key right there, because the word democracy is part of this trap that we're in.
Yes, it is.
We were taught. I was taught that democracy was the ideal, and most people still think that. Even people on our side of this conflict talk about saving our democracy. What they don't know is that what our founding fathers knew, and that is the democracy was one of the worst forms of government, and our founding fathers said so. Just go read the Federalist Papers, read the debates they carried on in Philadelphia during the forming of the Constitution, read the private memoirs. They all said that democracy always self-destructs. It lasts only so far until the majority can figure out that it can plunder the minority, and then you're living under slavery. And so they warned against democracy. Anyway, I think that they took the words collectivism out of circulation and individualism so that they could replace it with democracy. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And they succeeded. Most people still think we have to fight wars to protect democracy. Okay, that's another topic in itself. Now I'm going to just bring it finally to what is collectivism and what is individualism, because these are the only two words I believe that are worthy of any discussion as to political ideologies. There are only two of them in the world. And socialism, communism, fascism, Nazism, New Dealism, what are all the words that they come up with now? All these words mean the same thing. People even now use the word Americanism. And you say, well, what do you mean by Americanism? And they come up with the same 9 points that Hitler came up with and that Stalin came up with. So forth. The world predominantly is made up of believers of collectivism. And the reason is, you'll recognize it, and you will especially, right away, that the mantra of collectivism, perhaps the one principle that stands out above all others, is this. The group is more important than the individual. And the individual must be sacrificed, if necessary, for the greater good of the greater number. That is sort of the mantra of collectivism. Everybody says, yeah, the greater good of the greater number. What could be wrong with that? Well, everything could be wrong with that.
Right.
If you're really going to take, for example, a lynch mob.
Right.
There's only one dissenting vote, and he's at the end of the rope. And if you like democracy, you got it right there in a lynch mob. It's just a question of how many people you're going to include in the group. You've got to be able to say, well, yeah, the majority should get what it wants, so long as it doesn't take away the rights of an individual. Individuals are supreme, not groups. First of all, groups don't even exist. What? What did Griffin just say? Groups don't even exist. What do you mean they don't exist? Well, can you touch a group? No. It's like a forest. You can see a forest made up of many trees, but you can't touch forest. You can touch trees.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
They're real. But the forest is an abstraction of the mind. It's like the number 7. You can't touch 7. It's an idea. And when you say an idea has rights that are superior to human beings that hold those ideas, you've made a huge mistake, because you brought into a trick. You brought into a system where some demagogue will come along and say, I represent the majority. I represent the people. Our political party represents the people. And we declare that we have to kill all redheads because they're the people that are causing problems. and we won the election, so we can do whatever we want to. All right, now we're in the world of collectivism versus individualism. And that's why I make a big deal out of it. By the way, my wife walked in and handed me this book. Back in the day, after I got wise, my first book was called The Fearful Master, and she just brought a copy of it in. This is my first book that I wrote.
Oh, wow.
And
can we still get it?
Well, we will very shortly. It's been out of print for quite a few years, but people keep buying it, and they're paying huge amounts of money for old copies. I said, wait a minute. Somebody's paying $100 for an old book of mine? Why don't we put it back? And so it's almost done now, and hopefully we'll have it ready by Christmas time. And this was 1964 published. Anyway, it's good to know that people like these old books. But anyway, this comes from the era of the time when they were getting rid of the words collectivism versus individualism. And I'll give you one more example of a principle. And there are about 7 of them that are really strong. And so that your viewers can get an idea, at least, of what I'm talking about. I think the second most prominent or revealing principle is the one dealing with the origin of government power, or state power, which is a better word. I don't want a government. I don't want to be governed. I think it's the wrong word. I think government should not states should not govern us. They should protect us.
Exactly.
So let's call it a protectorate and get rid of this word government. Except it's something we don't want. Instead, we teach well, what kind of government do you want? Well, you lost the debate already. You already said, I want a government. I want to be governed. No. You lost it right off the bat. So now, where was I going with that? Oh, the second principle, yeah. The question of what is the source of authority for a state? And most people would agree that it's the people themselves, we the people. And it was never that way before the American Revolution. It was always we the victor in battle. But never we the people. So this was an idea that a time had come. And now we've gotten rid of it already. It took us 200 years or 250 years to get rid of it, but it's gone pretty much.
We can bring it back.
Pardon?
We can bring it back.
Oh, of course we can. We're going to. We have to.
That's the battle. We have to. Exactly.
There's no option. Unless you want to live in a garbage can or something. Anyway, no, there's no option.
Slavery.
So this back to the principle. Where does the state get its power? Well, it gets it from the people. So then the question arises, well, what is government in the first place, or the state? And I believe the correct answer is it's the legalized use of force, coercion, where people get together and say, well, we don't want coercion or force except for certain conditions, and then we better, because otherwise we have to be on our roof all night long with a rifle to make sure there's nobody breaking into our house. We want police forces. We want somebody to take care of our dams if they break. Or there are certain things we want to have done that we're willing to sacrifice the right to defend ourselves. We'll give people, a certain small group of people called employees of the state, give them the right to carry guns and to kill us if necessary. So it's a serious business of how you define what the state is and where it gets its power. It's just powers. But if the just powers come from the people themselves, then the next question is, well, what do the people themselves, what do you and I have a right to kill somebody for?
Right.
Can we kill somebody? Well, yeah, you better believe it. If they're trying to kill us, we have the right to self-defense, to defend ourselves. Nobody would, or very few people would object to that. And well, okay, so that's one reason to protect our lives. What about our liberty? What if somebody's trying to put us in chains and make us their slave? I'm here to tell you, I would fight to the end to protect my freedom.
Yeah.
All right, there's two. Can you think of anything else that we have a moral right to kill another human being? I can't. And most people can't. There is none. There is none. Life and liberty. So we come to the amazingly simple conclusion that the only reason we can have to use lethal force against another human being is in the defense of life or liberty. Period. End of discussion. And so we cannot delegate to our elected representatives any power that we ourselves do not have to delegate. So we cannot say, okay, Mr. Congressman, I want you to pass a law that requires all stores to be closed on Sunday. Because we're men and women of God, and we think we should close the stores on Sunday. I can't force my neighbor to close his store on Sunday. I can't kill him or fine him or put him in prison if he does. And how in the heck can I vote for somebody to say, hey, I authorize you to do it?
Right.
It's a very simple and logical principle that no one told me about in college or high school. No one.
I'll bet you there's a lot of those principles and those truths and those underlying truths, especially in our monetary system, that they don't teach in college
No.
or
No.
grade school, which is frankly where it should be taught,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah. So there you have it. There you have it. The collectivists believe that the power comes from the state. Comes from the state, doesn't come from the people.
Yeah.
When you look at our Constitution, it says, we the people. When I was young, I just, we the people, of course, no big deal. Yeah, it was a big deal.
Big deal.
A big deal. The first time in history that anybody said the state derives its power not from the conquering warrior who killed as many people as he could, so he's the chief dog now, or because he says he was empowered by God to
Right.
represent. Yeah, you have a theocracy. You didn't do it. God gave you the power. Those are anyway, no. So the collectivists believe that the state is the source of power. And you are lucky if they give you a right. And you should thank them for it. But our Constitution in America was just the other way around. The purpose of the state was to protect the innate God-given rights. And now if you don't want to use the word God-given, then try another way of looking at it. How about the difference between hardware and software? You know, when we're born, we've got the hardware. And it's not added to us later by software. We're born with it in it.
Right.
Our rights are born with us. And so no matter how you look at it, a free society has to depend on that principle as well as several others. Okay, those are two I just mentioned. Each one of those you could talk for hours on all the ramifications of it.
Absolutely.
And this is what we need to do, is restore this kind of interest and curiosity back into our population so that we understand what liberty means and what it requires. And so we don't fall for the same old tricks over and over and over again. Okay, I've taken way too long to explain all that. So I'm going to throw it back to you, and you tell me something I want to hear.
Well, actually, I'm going to ask you the next question because, in my opinion, 2008 was the end of the current system. And then they were rushing to put the new system, the digital system, in. But there's also been, you brought it up, a rise in socialism in the U.S. And we can see it in New York with Mondami. We can see it other places in this country. So it's interesting because what they're fighting for is to fix the rent and not the money. Mm-hmm. Our battle is to fix the money. And as crazy as it may sound to some people, and I want your opinion on this one especially, you could talk about 2008, but I want to see redeemable gold back in the system because that's the way people have the power, because they're independent of that permission system, which is what they put in place in hiding us. Do you have a thought on, I don't know whether or not it's going to work. You've been battling this even longer than I have. But you have any comments on that and getting gold back in the system? Not because they say it's a token over here. We see that in Zimbabwe. What did it mean? It meant nothing. Right?
No, just a word. Yeah.
Meant nothing. But
well, I think it's self-evident, Lynette. It's self-evident that it doesn't have to be gold, but something of intrinsic value. And it just so happens by the process of trial and error over how many centuries, it always winds up being gold and silver. Now, the day may come when that may not be the case. Some guy in his laboratory may figure out how to make gold out of seawater,
They've been trying that for thousands.
I've been told there's a lot of monatomic gold everywhere, but it's monatomic. Until you get two molecules together, you don't see it. But anyway, some idiot's going to figure out how to do that someday, and then gold will not be the one. It'll be something else. I don't know. But it has to be something that takes human effort to produce, so that it can be equally evaluated against human effort to produce anything else. Otherwise, if it takes no human effort on one side, you know what's going to happen, and that's what we're living under. The system,
Right.
yeah. Can I get one of those?
I'll bring one. I will totally bring a special one just
that's
for
good.
you.
That's good. Oh, yeah, bring a couple of them.
I will. I will bring you as many as you want. I will be very happy to do that.